If you've traveled anywhere in Warren County, by vehicle, foot, or any other mode of transportation, you've probably asked yourself, where are all these people coming from? You may be hitting the road earlier in the morning to get to work than you did a decade ago because of increased traffic. You may have witnessed construction of apartments or subdivisions near your home. You may have noticed that your child's school is at or beyond capacity. And no matter how much it seems we've grown in the past 10 to 20 years, it doesn't look like we're done yet. From 2010 to 2020, Warren County grew by more than 32,000 people, and our population is projected to increase by 2,500 people every year. So how does all this growth affect our community? What does it mean for our housing stock in terms of availability, affordability, and location? Additionally, our county's reputation as an employment destination persists, which goes hand in hand with our population count. The local workforce includes jobs in manufacturing, healthcare, transportation or logistics, construction, and business or IT. But do people view holding a job the same way they did 10 years ago? And of course, we can't forget about the COVID pandemic and how that has changed life for us all, including even the way we shop for everyday goods and services. These issues aren't necessarily unique to Warren County, but that doesn't make them any less pressing for us to address. We have to evaluate what changes there have been and could be in housing, the workforce, transportation, and commercial activity. By studying the past and assessing the present, we can better prepare ourselves for the future.
For Session 2, we're going to look at demographics, trends, and plans, which pretty much entails what Appendix 1, the community assessment, that was done in 2012 at the adoption of the comprehensive plan. Mostly focus on trends, what we see happening today, what have we seen happen the past 10 years, and then what do we see happening in the near future, or certainly the next 10 years through the life of this plan. Few resources that we commonly use. Of course, everybody's aware of the 2020 census that was recently conducted. Data from that is starting to be released, and you can go on the new census website, which is really good. They have made it easier than ever to search for whatever you're looking for. Another common data source that we use a lot in our office is the Kentucky State Data Center from the University of Louisville. Their site is not quite so intuitive and in very much government fashion type, just data downloads and here's your information. But there's a lot of information here. Projections is what a lot of people use. We'll look at ours here in just a second. But there's a lot more information, statistics on education, crime, housing, so a lot of that is aggregated here if you want to look that up. We also use sister agency plans. The example here is the recent housing assessment that was done by the City of Bowling Green. It analyzed the housing market for the entirety of Warren County. We'll talk about that a little later as well. Any local and regional data that we can find, of course, we get that, and then national trends from a variety of sources we look at as well. So I mentioned the population projections. So this was from the Kentucky State Data Center when our MPO, the MPO updated our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP. We asked the State Data Center to update the population projections for Warren County, and this is what we received for that. A couple of things that we like to point out when we show this graphic is that we're going to be approaching 200,000 people in population in 2045. We increase in population about 2,500 people every year. Our households are projected to almost double in the next 30 years. And then the number of people per household is expected to decrease over time. And when we get looking at some more trends here in a little bit, we'll see some of those reasons why that could be the case. So just in general, we've had slow and steady growth from the 1800s to World War II. But after World War II, we experienced 50% growth in a 10-year period. Our population just keeps increasing. We double in population around every 20-25 years. In 1990s, we had a 16-person increase, 2000s a 20,000 person increase, and then the time period from 2010 to 2016, there was already a 12,000 person increase, and then by 2020, again, that was projected. The slide's a little older, but it was projected to be 125,000 people, or a 32,000 person increase. Our actual 2020 number from the 2020 census was actually 134,554, so it was a 32,513 person increase from that 2010 time period. So we routinely beat our population projections. So we go back to our population projections that we obtained in 2018 or 2019 for the MTP. Then we see that our projection was 133,207, and then our actual in the 2020 census was 134,554. So over 1,000 person increase over our projections. And again, that holds true. We kind of beat those projections every time they conduct them. So that's a quick general overview of Warren County. Now I would like to ask our friends at the Barren River Development District what they see happening in the region and how things are being influenced and trends that are happening in the region and maybe beyond, and how those may be affecting Warren County, but the whole Barren River Area Development District region.
So we're here with Emily Hathcock, who is the Associate Director for Planning and Development with the Barren River Area Development District, and appreciate you helping us out. As you know, we're updating our comprehensive plan, taking a look at it, looking at trends, statistics, and all of that good stuff. Of course, we typically focus just solely on Warren County, so we kind of wanted to get an idea of some of the things that are happening maybe outside of the county. So what have you seen, especially in the past 5-10 years, what's kind of changed?
Yeah, absolutely. We are in the process of updating some large regional plans as well. Yes. And so we're kind of in the same boat, looking at what's common threads. We're seeing a lot around transportation, particularly transit and connecting transit hubs together, especially with Bowling Green being such a regional center for doctors and medical and even just grocery. We're seeing a lot of desire in our outlying communities to be able to tap transit system linkages together so that someone could get on a transit system, say in Scottsville, and find their way to Bowling Green without leaving the public transit sphere. So that's kind of the major thing that we're seeing right now. Mm-hmm. We're also seeing quite a bit of projects development around an aging population and providing services for that population. Be it increased senior centers or new ways to provide in-home care, things like that. And then obviously broadband is a big thing. All of our counties are looking at how do we best deploy broadband and how do we increase that infrastructure to be competitive in today's market.
Very, very interesting. Lots of good stuff. Good stuff there. So beyond that, so is there anything else that our communities should be considering or paying attention to? Like, what is the future? What do you see? Will we see expanded broadband in the region? Will we be able to do more transit? Or
I think both of those are very within the realm of reason, and we should be looking to move in that direction. I think also in a post-pandemic world, our workforce is changing, and we need to be able to provide that adaptability for our workers to be able to attract those lone eagles, those people who could work anywhere but choose to live here because we're such a great place to be. So it's providing that type of quality of life thing as well. And I think all of that fits together really and builds upon each other.
Sure. I think there's going to be opportunities for a lot of hybrid office workspace too, work home part of the time, come to the office part of the time. Well, that's great look at what we see in the region. Look forward to continuing to work together on the regional plans as well as our local plans. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to the Barren River Area Development District for that insight into the region. I want to share an article we found out of Governing Magazine recently on how the migration to smaller cities is expected to continue post-pandemic. During the COVID pandemic, a lot of people moved out of larger cities into smaller cities, less dense cities, to escape some of the fear of the pandemic, but also just to take that opportunity to have a different kind of experience other than a super urban or a large urban experience. And just share with one quote out of that. I will post this link to our resources, Session 2 resources page, but just want to share one, I guess, excerpt out of that article from the Jerry Anthony Associate Professor of the University of Iowa on the 5 main benefits of small city living. It's usually a lower cost of housing, and you got to keep in mind we're comparing that to Louisville, Indianapolis, New York, Chicago, larger cities. So usually there's a lower cost of housing, a better sense of community and connectedness to events and activities in the community, kind of a smaller, close-knit community feel. There's more opportunities to make a tangible difference through civic engagement, so you can have a bigger impact. Your voice can have a bigger impact than being swallowed by the entirety of, say, New York City. A greater sense of fulfillment and life satisfaction, and then much less time spent commuting or traveling within the city. Once we get to transportation, we'll talk about some of our local concerns and woes.
So now we're here with Eric Druen, who's our development specialist here at the Planning Commission, and we'll just have a conversation a bit here about Planning Commission activity, starting with kind of what have we seen maybe the first 10 years of our comprehensive plan, so roughly 2010, 2012 time period to today.
So essentially during that time period, we were kind of coming out of I guess an economic slump, so to say. And while there was a certain, I guess, floating above water, so to say, around here that we were kind of maintaining without there being quite such a depression. In 2010, 2012, we were really starting to see a slight growth out of that phase. You know, we really weren't developing clearly what we are now, but maybe that 1 to 2 subdivision, very minimal commercial growth, and you know, and again with industrial, maybe 1 or 2 big projects a year, nothing too crazy.
Mm-hmm. Well, compare that with kind of what we've seen maybe the past 5 years and really this past 2 years.
Right. So really in the last 5 to 6 years, we're starting to see, again, where we were 10 years ago, maybe 1 or 2 subdivisions for the city and the county. Now, basically in 2015, 2016, we're jumping up to 5 and 6 subdivisions a year. And then moving forward, inching forward a few years, now we're seeing 10 to 12 subdivisions. Now within those, you're seeing a vast majority of single-family lots being created, but then you're also seeing a large growth of multifamily and commercial lots. And then we're also seeing, obviously, the growth in our industrial projects, just massive, massive growth. And so when we're talking about the major approvals, when those big site plans for subdivisions are approved, then you start to see that trickle down even the next year. Once those subdivisions are developed and completed, then you start seeing permits just blow up, and because they're building out those subdivisions.
Right. So of course, we have seen that all across commercial development. I think we've seen not too much activity there, as we still see steady activity,
right,
but it's maybe a little slower pace than in the past as we come along, I think, as a society with the adjustment in retail that we've seen, where we order more things online.
Certainly.
I think there's less and less of that. But the other thing I've noticed is the size of the developments we're getting, especially recently, seem to be bigger subdivisions again. They still phase them out, but it's bigger subdivisions versus maybe a 50 lot subdivision here and there. So the sheer numbers seem to be getting bigger.
Sure. And even I would say some of the more regional and nationally known contractors are starting to come into this area, where we are seeing our local developers are still developing and building and selling those lots, but we're also seeing on the permits, we're seeing major development companies coming in and buying, half a subdivision and then building those lots or building out those lots and selling them.
And selling them quickly. I understand we both talk to contractors, builders, and realtors a lot in our office, and a common theme we hear is that they sell these homes, especially single-family homes, sight unseen. Sell them before they even get the foundations done. So there's seems to be a lot of demand there. What about multifamily? What do we kind of see in multifamily?
So when you look at the chart from the last 10 years, and again, we talk about whenever we get the approvals for the plans and then we have the build outs, our chart basically for the last 10 years almost kind of does this upward zigzag pattern. And so basically at the bottom, we're approving the plans, it jumps up in permitting, and then we're building those out. Well, while we're building those out, we're not getting any new subdivisions for multifamily, but then again, it's almost kind of like, all right, they're filled, we need more plans, and they're just every year is increasing more and more.
Yeah, so it's kind of more of a 2-year cycle is what you need to look at to really assess our overall development. And the other thing that's interesting is seems like we'll have that 1-2-year cycle will be single family, and then it starts the multifamily, so they'll kind of alternate a bit. So 1 year you may see the number of permitted the single family lots go up and then down that second year, but then that second year you'll see the number of permits of multifamily go up.
Exactly.
So that kind of is balanced out. So we kind of covered a little bit about that, and we about our development, overall planning commission activities, how it's this last 5 years especially has been the highest that we've seen, that we have records for. What about the future? What do you think the next 5 to 10 years will?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the demand is absolutely there. So when you hear things from the developers or the market or our real estate agents or realtors in this area, they're saying we can't keep these houses on the market fast enough, and they're just selling out. And then also our local developers are always looking at new projects where they can invest their money and their success they've had in the last few years, and you're just seeing that continual growth. And then also you're seeing, again, major industrial projects. It seems like what we're seeing as a trend now, our economic development staff here and locally, they've had major success in recruiting those industries, big projects, and then it seems like the next one says, well, I want to locate there too. And then it's just a snowball effect.
So what happens if we quit building apartments and single-family homes?
Well, with the job growth and what we're trying to attract to locate in these areas for these jobs, I mean, I think if we stop building those, then essentially those people will begin to commute from other areas, other communities. So
yeah, so housing, all types of housing, whether it be multifamily or single-family, is the same supply and demand economic model that we see for goods as well. So I think we have to keep our supplies up as we continue to grow. That will help keep one factor in helping to keep housing costs down, to create that stock. So I appreciate the conversation, and I'm sure we'll get more into this as we go along and go through each different element of the comprehensive plan. So appreciate it.
Yep.
Now we'll take a look at some national and local trends. Change is happening. We appear to be in the midst of a fundamental change in the housing market, housing demand, preferences in housing, and just amenities that we expect in our housing developments. Definitely in the middle of a change to the retail sector and how we shop and expect things to be delivered to us instead of going out and going shopping. So our travel patterns are starting to change in some instances. And we're on the precipice of a fundamental change to our transportation system, especially as we look at technologies in transportation systems and in vehicles and cars and other things. And so we'll take a look at a few of those items that are predicting that change or looking at change. But we'll start with population. Who is the largest generational population group? You have the silent generation, your baby boomers, your Gen Xers, millennials, and now Gen Z. But it's always been told for a long period of time now that the baby boomers are the largest population cohort. But it's actually the millennials now. They passed the baby boomers in 2016. This is data based on the Pew Research Center with the link below, and this was done in the 2016 time frame, so a little dated, but now the millennials population cohort is bigger than the baby boomers, and of course that is expected to continue to grow as baby boomers move on, let's just say, and the millennials continue to age. So we mentioned earlier about household sizes. So one of the national housing trends that we look at is concerning nuclear families. They make up only 20% of households today, and by today this was, I think, 2018 or 2019 data. But it used to be a married couple, the American dream, the old American dream now. Married couple with 2.5 kids and a dog and a ranch home on 1 acre with a white picket fence. So in 1950, nuclear families or traditional families made up 43% of households. By 1970, that had dropped a little bit, but only 3% of 40% households. But non-traditional households make up about 50% of households now. So 50% of households are 1 or 2 person households. So the number 1 household category is a single person living alone. The number 2 household category is couples with no children. So 1 and 2 person households now dominate the landscape for those household units. So with less people living together and moving away from nuclear families where you have 2 adults, 2 kids, or an example, 2 adults and half a kid, then we're starting to trickle down now. So when one of the questions we get commonly asked, why so many apartments, why such small houses? Well, a lot of households are now just 1 and 2 people, and who work and don't necessarily want to take care of a yard, don't want to have some of the responsibilities that come with managing a larger household where you have multiple people taking care of everything and it's just left to one responsibility. So trends by generation. A lot of this data come from the National Association of Realtors, a magazine called On Common Ground, winter of 2019. Then the local Realtors Association, the Realtors Association of Southern Kentucky, sends me that magazine when they have an article of interest related to planning, and very much appreciate that. So I do read those. So baby boomers are looking for similar sized dwellings but more affordable. Homes in the suburbs but still close to friends. Generation Xers are seeking larger homes to house themselves but also their aging parents and adult children over 18. Having 2 children of my own, 1 over 18 and 1 approaching 18, this next statistic kind of concerns me a bit. 2017, 26% of adults aged 25 to 34 were still living with their parents. Millennials, they tend to live in more urban environments than rural. They want to live close to friends and family but have short commutes. They're slower to form households and having children later in life. They only have a 39% marriage rate compared to 52% in 1990. So again, getting married less, not having children as fast, smaller household sizes. And so again, that all relates to smaller household units, smaller homes, apartments, and the like. So So some of the suggestions provided by this article were local government should try to rethink land use and zoning to allow more density. We heard that in our first session discussion that, hey, we need to find ways to build closer to the city or inside the city or maybe even up instead of out. So locally we made adjustments to our density ranges to accomplish some more of that density. Density is more efficient and cheaper to service for the government, i.e. the taxpayers, helps keeps taxes low. However, zone change after zone change that we have that adds density next to existing housing or creates some mixed use environments is one of the most controversial zone change situations that we have. So it's not always viewed favorably. Unit sizes can be reduced to lower costs. I think some of that's market rate factors, and we see some of that happening. You know, the smaller units closer together generally have higher build costs, but smaller units are overall more affordable to build. And then, of course, we've mentioned that family sizes are getting smaller. Parking requirements can be lessened or eliminated, and we have adjusted our parking minimums lower, but we, especially here in the rural South, we love our cars still and our parking spots at our businesses. So we have adjusted our parking minimums down, but we still recognize that our community still needs parking for businesses and have reduced those where it makes sense, and we'll continue to look at that mix as life moves along. So more recent housing article we looked at. But millennials will drive up home prices for years to come. That was in Barron's magazine. There's the link. Again, we'll provide that in the resources section of session 2 webpage. A couple things just wanted to point out from this, that this cohort, i.e. the millennials, is forming households, marrying, and having children, all which require space. But the number of households headed by adults 30 to 44 years old jumped by 1.3 million during the pandemic. So married couples ages 31 to 40 were more likely than any other age group to purchase homes. Again, this is National Association Realtors. And then the largest group of unmarried couples who purchased homes were aged 22 to 30. So you're seeing the millennials really starting to purchase these homes now. And then that same survey revealed that millennials 31 to 40 were the most likely to have at least one child under 18 at home. So again, we're starting to see a reversal of that trend over the past 10 years, and we'll just have to see how that, monitor how that continues as we hopefully come out of the pandemic and get back to whatever our new normal is. Now I would like to take a few moments to ask our local Realtors Association a few questions about what they see happening now and what is happening over the past 10 years and what they think will happen in the near future.
So we're here with Kenny Cravens, President of the Realtors Association of Southern Kentucky, and we appreciate your time being here with us and helping us out as we go through our videos and trends and statistics on our comprehensive plan. And so it's just wanted to touch base with you guys and just see what any comments you would have. What did the housing and real estate market look like maybe 10 years ago versus today? It's just kind of an opening question here. Sure,
and first I want to say thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys including us in this, and we always love the opportunity to talk about real estate. So you asked about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, we were really in a little bit of a transition phase. You know, there was the 06, 7, 8 trend where things were down. People were not into real estate, should you say, as much as they were. And once we got into that 2010, 11, 12, we started to see an increase. And every year since then, we have seen a steady increase of real estate. So 10 years ago, average price on a home was $170,000. We're now at nearly $270,000. Wow. So the last 10 years have just been a huge boom for the Bowling Green, whole South Central area, and probably all of the southern Kentucky, southern United States. So we're in that same trend. We may be even farther ahead than some because we didn't have, even in 08 and 09, we didn't have the downturn as much as others, so it was easier for us to rebound. So, so yeah, 10 years ago, a little bit of a transition, and ever since then, it's been a booming market.
It's some amazing numbers to think about. Is there any particular location as far as the growth goes in Warren County? Has it just been all over, or is it heavier in one area versus another?
Well, that's a good question. Typically, most areas grow to the south. It's just the way it is all across the country. Obviously, if you have a border there, then you can't grow as far south. We don't have a border, so we don't have any natural border. So yes, the southern area of the county is growing faster. However, with the Transpark in the northern part, we've seen a huge explosion there as well. So a lot of neighborhoods popping up, a lot of development there as well. So if you had to ask me, I would say the southern area and a little bit in the northern area as well.
Very good. One of the interesting things I always like to point out in speeches I give is how we've, in the past anyway, built our main housing areas in the south, but build all of our jobs in the north. But hopefully that's starting to equalize a bit. So what about today? What kind of demand are we seeing today for housing and real estate? I know you got the COVID factor, it's got played a role in everything, but just what's going on today?
Well, I mean, you'd be crazy to not notice what's going on. Home prices are up close to 10%, close to 20%, 10%, yes, over the last year. Typically you see about a 3 to 5% increase, maybe 6%. We're up 10% just year over year. Some of that does have to do with COVID because while we didn't really have a down year last year, we still increased in sales. It was a little more steady, whereas this year it's been more of an explosion. So we've gone from selling anywhere from 1,500 units a year in the last 5 years, and now we've sold 1,760 units to date. So it's been a little bit of an explosion. We've seen that since demand, of course, is high, then the prices are going to be higher. It's supply and demand, the old adage of supply and demand. We know that's going to happen. However, I don't see it going down. That's the thing that's exciting about this area right now, is that there's nothing forecasting that says we're going to go down. We may level off a little bit and get back to normal, and normal, like I said, would still be a 5 to 6% increase in housing prices. So it's still a great investment. It's
amazing. So I'm going to ask you one of the questions I get asked all the time. Where are these people coming from?
Well, the easy answer is all over. But I would say just in the last year, one of the things that I hear from agents more than anything else is that we have people coming in not only from the north who are trying to get in a little bit more of the sunny, but also from the west. I think now more than ever, we've got an influx coming from California, Arizona. We see a lot of that right now. I have agents who have told me they have several clients they're working with who are coming in from California. That would have been unheard of 5 years ago.
Right.
But what's happening is we see them coming from areas that have seen a huge price increase, and they come here, and this is affordable housing to them. You know, a $300,000 house to them is like, wow, this is crazy. I would pay $5,600,000 for this same house. So yes, to ask where they're coming from the west and from the north.
And from areas that are used to paying at asking price or maybe even above.
That's right, and we do, yes, and we have that now. We're probably, and I haven't looked at the stats on this, we're probably at about 98% of asking price as an average, whereas 10 years ago, you'd be looking at 90%, 91% of asking price. We have a lot that are going at asking or above. We get into multiple offer situations. You also mentioned where they're coming from. Nashville's had a huge impact on us. Nashville has exploded. Like you said, their housing has gone up a lot, probably more than ours. And so people are looking for ways to get away, they can still move here and they can drive back and forth to Nashville so they can have that commute, especially now with I-65 being widened. They've announced that it will be widened from Nashville to the Kentucky line, so we'll have 3 lanes going both directions. So that's a huge plus for us as well, so we'll get those people as well.
do you have any comment on how that may be affecting maybe surrounding counties, Scottsville, Allen County, or Franklin and Simpson County, or any other county?
It does, and as Warren County goes, then the surrounding counties go as well.
Sure.
Obviously, they're going to be a little bit more affordable housing once you go outside of Warren County, but the thing is, they're all increasing as well. They're seeing the same boom in the surrounding counties that we see here. That's a good thing. It's we can find places to develop sometimes easier in the surrounding counties, but yes, the surrounding counties are seeing the same increase that we are.
It sounds like we need to keep paying attention to our transportation infrastructure for our commuters. So just to end, is there anything else that you think we as a community need to be thinking about or paying attention to going forward in just the housing market, housing realm?
Sure, I've got a few things. I mean, you just mentioned infrastructure. So that would be the first thing that we really need to look at is how is our infrastructure impacting commutes to work? We still have a great infrastructure. We have a decent roadway system where people don't have to travel more than 15 minutes or so to get to work, even if they live on the outskirts of Bowling Green. However, we can do better. So that would be my first thing, is that we need to look at how to improve. And it may not be more roads because there's really not anywhere to put them, but maybe looking at a different way to get people from point A to point B. I think roundabouts are a great addition. I know, I'm just one of those that I love them. I think it's a great way to get traffic moving and to keep it moving. So that would be first. Second would be housing. So we look at the prices that we're in. If an average price is at $270, where are we helping out the working class?
Right.
And we need to find a way that we can, and it may be, I know that some people will not want to hear this, but it may be that we need to look at reducing the restrictions. So instead of having to have 3 houses on an acre, let's try to get 5 houses on an acre so that we can get that price down a little bit, because developers are having a hard time to be able to develop the land and still make it work. And when I say make it work, I'm not talking about huge profits. I'm just saying to make it work.
Sure.
They can't do it. And so they're not able to buy the land and develop it. The other thing I would say is some type of government subsidies to build the houses so that we can have affordable housing for the working class in areas they want to move. So maybe on some of the outlying areas, rather than making it in a dense downtown area, we may want to look at somewhere. As you mentioned earlier, the Transpark is a perfect example. So look in the northern part of the county where we could develop some of that with some government subsidies, something where we can help builders out and developers. So that would probably be my biggest take from this, is something that we can do to help our developers out as we have this influx of people coming in.
That's excellent. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
You bet.
Let's take a little closer look at affordable housing and look at some trends and statistics on affordable housing. So the living wage is the hourly rate that an individual must earn to support their family if they are the sole provider and working a full-time job. The average household size in Warren County currently is right at 2.5 people per household, so that's what we've highlighted in the table below, as the options where really 3 people are living in the same household. The link at the bottom is the reference where this data is pulled from. It's MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and this is a great site that keeps up to date. Some of you may have seen this slide in previous presentations that we've given, but this is just up to date for this particular time frame and presentation. So the numbers are higher than they were last time we went through this presentation. So the living wage for 1 adult and 2 children, as examples, just over $35 an hour, and that's for a comfortable living wage again. As referenced at the top of the page. The poverty wage is just under $11 an hour, or just under $10.50 an hour, $10.44 for 1 adult that has 2 children. So it could be a single mom with 2 kids. And then of course minimum wage is still $7.25. So you can see what the living wages for 2 adults with only 1 working and 1 child, and then 2 adults working and 1 child, then each adult would have to make $15.58 an hour to have a living wage for Warren County, Kentucky. So if we take those numbers and we look at what our median household income, and again, that's from the 2019 survey data, because the 2020 census data for this particular statistic has not been released yet, but it was just over $52,000 a year as for the median household income. If you look at 30% of their income spent on housing, no more than 30% by the U.S. Housing and Urban Development definition, you're looking at $15,681 is 30% of that $52,270 of median household income. So they could afford approximately a $1,300 a month payment, or around a $246,000 purchase price, again, to not be spending any more than 30% of their income, making just over $52,000 a year. So a person making $15 an hour is making roughly $31,000, just over $31,000 a year. You have 2 adults making $15 an hour, that's $62,400 a year. So what could they afford? So if it's just 1 adult at $15 an hour, that's about a $9,000, just over $9,000 per year, and they would be able to afford a $72,000 home. 2 adults making $62,000 a year, they'd be able to spend 30% of that is that $18,720, and they would be able to afford just right at $197,000 home. The average home listing price in Warren County was right around $250,000 a year. So you can see the average home price at $250,000. The 2 adults making the $15 an hour can only comfortably afford at 30% of their income a $200,000 home. So it's about a $50,000 difference there. So we're starting to see that gap is higher than the last time we looked at it, this analysis. So it is, the gap may be increasing as we see there, something we'll continue to monitor. So that's just the purchase price. If we look at the average utilities per month, you're looking at about $1,100 a month for the payment, then about $200 a month for utilities, and then about another $232 a month for taxes and insurance. So in total, that's about $1,554 a month for the home payment, the utilities and taxes, or about a $18,000 and $19,000 per year price. And of course, that's assuming a 3.5% interest rate and 20% down with good credit to even achieve that. So there's that's kind of where we're at on average prices. So moving along, we'll look at rentals now. So our average rent's $841 a month. That is up again from last time we looked, about $10,000 a year. Average 1 bedroom is $629 a month. 2 bedrooms, $800 a month. 3 bedrooms, over $1,000 a month. And we are seeing about a 3% a year increase in rents from year to year in Warren County. So that continues to go up. Again, utilities a little lower in apartment because they're smaller. You got $194 a month there, so that equates to just over $2,300 a year in utilities. And that was based on a 915 square foot apartment average or rental average. So rent plus utilities over $1,000 a month, and that's about $12,500 a year. So if that's 30% of your income, you would have to make $41,405.20. So that would be to comfortably afford that average apartment, which is right at that 2-bedroom range. So again, reminder, one person, $15 an hour, we're making $31,200 a year, assuming no overtime. So that's another gap there. So we mentioned our housing market needs analysis that the city of Bowling Green funded that covered the entirety of Warren County, and this was the one slide that we always point out from that, and just basically shows that we have very high demand for all types of housing, a variety of housing in our community. Some of the highest need, of course, is on the lower income ends. Rents ranging from $0 to $442 a month rent, and then very low, $442 to $736 a month rent. And again, our average rents are over $800. And then moderate demand for our low and moderate rentals, and then high demand for high-end rental, and some of that has we feel like has been built very recently. Likewise, and you look at for sale homes or single-family detached homes, then we have your starter homes, your entry-level homes, 100 to 174,000 is high demand. Likewise, with the kind of that next level up, the $175,000 to $250,000 homes, and then your higher end homes also experiencing moderate demand.
So we're here with Rhondell Miller, Executive Director of Hotel Inc. And just want to first say thank you for participating with us in our comprehensive plan update and just having this community conversation and taking a look at the happenings in our community. And so with that, I just want to, so in your world, what does the landscape look like the past 10 years or versus today, or what do we need to be thinking about?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think that the comprehensive plan is very important, and it's so important for us to be looking at right now for where we are and what we may be our future. And so the past decade has been very challenging when it comes to not just housing, but also just households being able to more than just survive, and we have definitely seen that increase, that gap increasing for housing availability, affordability over the last 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm. So you brought quite a few statistics with you, and we don't have to necessarily get too far in the weeds, but just what are some of the highlights, or maybe not, highlights may not be the best term, but what are some of the things that you're seeing there?
Yeah, so when the city did the housing assessment in 2019, well, we received the results in 2019. I felt like that gave us a really great look in black and white, and it gave voice to something that many of us in the nonprofit sector, is also those who have been advocating for affordable workforce housing. Mm-hmm. It kind of put it on paper of this is real and this is the reality. And mm-hmm. so some of that is also that our poverty rate in our city continues to be increasing and not decreasing, and that's something we need to be concerned about.
Yes. So you mentioned workforce housing, and during the presentation we go over a little bit about living wage, what people can afford, and what that gap may be. I think you pointed to me a website just a few minutes before we started recording here on the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and we will post that as one of our resources. But can you tell us a little bit about what that's showing?
Yeah, and this is called the Out of Reach Report. It is a report that is done annually all across the United States by state and then by county and municipalities within each state. And so you can pull up and look at the city of Bowling Green as a whole, as well as Warren County. And most of the time, Bowling Green and Warren County will be right about the same. But what this is showing us this year is, well, one, if a person is earning minimum wage, then it would take 70 hours of work a week to be able to afford a one-bedroom rental at fair market rent. And so if we think about the quality of life, if all we can do is churn in the time clock that really diminishes time with our family or time for our physical health and mental health as well. But the wage is now up to $16.02 an hour.
That's to be able
to afford a basic two-bedroom rental and provide for your basic needs of life. So your housing, your food, transportation, clothing, and childcare is not totally added into that.
Right. And of course, during my presentation that was recorded, we talked about $15 an hour as our average wage. So a lot of what we're looking at and talking about is that gap between what we're paying or what we make and what is considered affordable or what's available. So all those things are slightly different, but certainly
Yes.
All go together.
Yeah, and when it comes for workforce housing, I think when there's maybe a natural judgment that sometimes happens when we just use the word affordable housing. I know I get asked all the time, well, what is affordable housing? Well, it's very simple. Affordable housing is 30% of our net income. So whatever that is for your household or my household or any other household. And that puts us all in the same playing field when that's the factor. But what that factors into in reality is when we have a 27.5% poverty rate just in the city limits, then we automatically know that 1 in 4 households are living in poverty, and so their housing needs are going to be great. And many of them may also be rent burdened. I know our housing assessment a few years ago really talked about that. Over 45% of our renters were rent burdened, meaning they're paying more. And I don't remember exactly the amount that we're paying over 50%, but it was quite high. I believe 25-30% were paying over 50% of their bring home pay just in rent. So that's not utilities, that's not those others. And I think that we've got to be forward thinking on looking at our past 10 years of how quickly that gap has grown, and how are we going to begin to take some steps to narrow the gap.
Sure. And so looking, I guess, predicting with our crystal ball the future, which is really hard to do right now, coming out of the pandemic especially, I think has really magnified things. I don't know that it's, and maybe accelerated things. I don't know if it's changed anything too much, but you mentioned rent burden. Just for example, our rents here in Warren County are going up 3% every year, and wages are not exactly, they have not exactly been following that in the past. So let's thinking about some of those trends. What should we be thinking about as a community? What are some of the things that we need to really maybe pay more attention to, or what are some of the things that we need to maybe try harder on, or you know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that, as we've talked many times through the years, there's many questions, a lot of responses, but we have to have a plan that gets us starting somewhere and identifying and hearing from the people, like what is that biggest hurdle, and really understanding too, what is the quality of life for our residents here. It shouldn't just be a good quality of life for people of privilege or people who make this price point. We as a community should be concerned that quality of life is available, a good quality of life for all of us. And so if I, as an employer, I have that concern for my employees, and I want to be able to pay them a living wage. I want to know that I'm not going to have high turnover maybe because I am paying that living wage, or maybe I'm also giving paid time off, or flexibility, because childcare is such a problem in our community for so many households. And you know, you talked about rent going up 3%. We've all seen the inflation of food costs this year. And there's also, we can't expect employers can't cover all of that, right? And so that's not our employer's job to do that. But I think that if we can really get to be looking at what is the quality of life for my staff, why do I have high turnover in certain areas, or what is the housing market really like in our community? We've seen some repurposing from student housing to family units happening over the last couple of years, and that's been really good to see that repurpose happening. And maybe we'll see more of that trend as well.
So it's almost like workforce and housing and transportation all need to be thought about as one entity for the community. So one thing we mentioned earlier when we were speaking was childcare, and I think you said that there was only one 24-hour childcare. That seems like it may be a little short of what we would need in this community when we have so much 24-hour shift work at the factories. So,
or hospitals, or nursing home facilities, other places that also have second and third shift staff. And yes, I mean, I'm sure that child care can only have a certain capacity, but yes, we only have one. If there are others, I've never heard of them.
Yeah. Well, one thing we always say is we like to create opportunity and variety of housing in a variety of locations, a variety of types, at a variety of price points. You know, I think that's one thing we all recognize is the opportunities that are given to be upwardly mobile, and we need to be paying attention to those on the low end and the high end as we evaluate those.
Yeah, we've really seen, you know, when a person maybe has needed subsidized housing to start, but we've really seen there's now nowhere for them to go. And so they begin to be paying fair market rent in their subsidized housing, and still based on that 30%, but we don't have a lot of room in our community for jumping. So, you know, if you're jumping from 500 to 800, that's a huge jump, and not many families can really make that type of a jump. And so, finding that, building some of that middle ground, but also for home ownership. We have so many families and individuals that would love to own a home, but again, that price point is just, the gap is growing.
Yeah, that's why we look at those gaps and analyze those gaps to figure out what that is. I think it just makes that transition between, I guess, maybe subsidized housing, for example, and a true market rate payment just makes it that much harder to transition from one to the other. So I think we just all keep working together to try to figure out what that is.
Keep working on it, and I think we're going to have to kind of be courageous and adventurous maybe in some of it, to really think outside the box and look to other communities. This problem is not unique to Bowling Green. This is a nationwide problem, and you know, there's others that have already been maybe a little more ahead of the curve that maybe we could learn from. And I think just being open to exploring, and we have to experiment. We don't have to experiment large scale, but we could definitely experiment on a smaller scale to work on the affordable workforce housing especially.
Yeah. Certainly lots of food for thought there.
Food for thought.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's look at workforce trends next. So I watched on Facebook Live the South Central Kentucky Workforce Development Board had a Warren County Summit, and had 3 bullet points that I just want to mention from that. Leaning itself to trends, kind of changing trends in workforce. So in general, the workforce employees have a change in perception of attitude towards work. Work is being viewed as a means to an end and not necessarily a life goal for a fulfilling career, and how employers have to adapt to that and think about providing alternative incentives. Some of the things mentioned were educational opportunities, daycare for employees, offering flexible schedules and flexible vacation times, and maybe not the rigid structures that some of us have been used to in the past. The graphic to the right is straight off their website. Warren County's average starting wage is $15 an hour. Remember the statistics we went over a little bit earlier about the affordability, $15 an hour, and what kind of housing that can get you comfortably and to afford. Again, recent successes have seen those starting wages be higher than that, so hopefully our averages will go up, as well as some of our just general pay. So vacancies, it's often talked about and promoted here in Warren County. We are a importer of human capital, as regionally and locally here in Warren County. We have anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 jobs open at any given time, and we continuously are still very successful bringing in lots of new industry and new jobs. That will hopefully not get any higher, and we get people back to work. Recent WBKO story, Kentucky's job opening rate is second highest in the nation. All the stats referenced in there came from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. There are 167,000 unfilled jobs in Kentucky, which is represents 8.2% of Kentucky's workforce. The job opening rate may have plateaued over the summer. The rate surged from 5% in August to a high of 8.9% this past June. High rate of job openings is compounded by the state leading the nation with the biggest increase in people in Kentucky quitting their jobs, 4.5% quit rate versus 3.1 in July versus 4.5 in August. So I saw a spike there. Again, the reasons why are somewhat of a mystery. Factors may include the unemployment supplement and low wages. Unemployment remains elevated, though some signs there that it's doing well. Economy still has, or doing better, I'm sorry. The economy still has 5 million fewer jobs than it did before the pandemic. So job growth slowed in August and September. But again, that picture is starting to show signs of maybe getting a little better. But companies are eager to add workers and have posted a near record number of available jobs, but aren't having the greatest success in filling them. And so a lot of this remains somewhat of a mystery as to why. Another thing that's often talked about, and a lot of it was precipitated by this map here, identifying communities that are susceptible to workforce or automation, loss of jobs through automation, robots and the like. And of course you zoom in and you see Bowling Green there is in the red, so we have one of the higher susceptibilities to losing jobs through automation. I don't know that how big of a factor that is currently, but it is something I know the community continues to monitor. So what does automation look like? This is a warehouse that is made by a company overseas in England, I believe, and Kroger is currently installing some of these in the United States. Last I heard, this was a couple years ago. So I'll just let that play a minute as then we transition into the next segment.
Hey,
Now let's talk a little bit about technologies. Take a little closer look at transportation to start with. Autonomous vehicles gets a lot of attention in the media, and rightly so. Starting with, will autonomous vehicles happen? Well, you have over 40 corporations working on autonomous vehicles, including some very large companies. Tesla, of course, Alphabet, which is Google, Apple, Amazon, and of course every major car manufacturer there is. Autonomous trucking, I think, is another trend that we should pay attention to and look at the acceptance. When you think about these major corporations, Walmart, Amazon, they move goods back and forth, labor force, a lot of money behind this is what I'm trying to say. So the likelihood of it happening or at least being tested is pretty high in my opinion. When you look at the driverless vehicles, as you see that I guess you would call it still a semi-truck. It's not an 18-wheeler it looks like anymore, but you see that it's cabless. There's no person there, and that is an actual concept vehicle by Volvo. And then the autonomous car capable of driving itself. In this particular case, this Uber car does have a person in it, but again, another corporation with money behind it to try to make that happen. So driverless taxi services, on-demand ride sharing, those types of things. So those are trends we're keeping an eye on to see how that might change our way of transportation planning, transportation thinking. How will these vehicles interact with existing drivers, and what will that mean for the future roadways and future travel patterns? So autonomous deliveries, several different commercials. Actually, these pictures, some of these pictures are several years old now, probably 2019, 2018. Google was the first to receive federal highway clearance for drone deliveries in Virginia, and that was to deliver air deliveries by drone. You see the Amazon Prime Air at the bottom left. The Northern Kentucky Hub Network is designed, almost ready. That is Amazon's air headquarters in Northern Kentucky in the Cincinnati area. Amazon ground delivery inside your car and soon your garage. And that's actually already a reality if you're part of Amazon's network and you register your garage door opener with Amazon. That delivery driver can put that package in your garage. If your car is hooked up to have automatic locks and all of that, they can put it inside your car too. And inside your home is next and being tested, and we'll look at that. Just kind of go around here, starting in the bottom left. You have the Amazon Prime Air drone delivery package. That has been talked about for several and being developed for several years now. May or may not become an actual reality, but I know it's at least tested. Probably the closest thing that I'm aware of is if you're on the golf course, certain golf courses have drone deliveries. You can order your beverage of choice or snack or whatever, and it will be delivered to where you're at on the golf course, and that is on several golf courses across the country. Next to the right of that is the Kroger test vehicle. The Nero is what it's called. It holds 17 bags of groceries, drives up to curbside. You order it basically online or on the app. It drives up to curbside. The gull wing doors open and you can walk out to the curb and or your driveway, pull those groceries out, put them in the house, and then the driverless vehicle goes on down the road back to the distribution warehouse. FedEx made a splash with this commercial. Their little delivery robot there on the bottom right just drives along the sidewalk, can traverse stairs, and basically the doors will open. You get your package out, and it goes on its merry way. And then even before that, the picture above FedEx is the Domino's delivery drone. Holds your pizza, comes up to your house, keeps it warm. You just grab your pizza out of there and go along your way. So there's some of the more advanced point-to-point driverless autonomous deliveries that are being proposed and actually tested, and in some areas are actually in active. Of course, these all will start in larger cities, but eventually may trickle down. This may be beyond the life of our current comprehensive plan of 2030, but it may not be. Just again, things we have to monitor and trends we have to see and try to plan for as we move along. I want to show this quick video. This one's a little bit scary to me just because I call this Ford's headless delivery robot, but I want to just show a little bit of this video here.
Once a self-driving car arrives at its destination, Digit will unfold itself from the back of the car. Then it'll grab the correct package from the vehicle and walk straight to your door to drop off the package.
So that's just one example of testing for autonomous delivery. Would you answer the door? Well, the next step would actually be open your locks and let that robot come into your house, deliver the package, and then leave and lock the doors back. Interesting concept, just completely, I guess, different to say the least. So acceptance of that, consumer acceptance of that. So why bring the package into your house or into a secure place? To combat porch pirates from stealing packages off the porch. So the next one I just want to show is Amazon Prime Air. Most of you are familiar with that, but I'll let this play for just a minute. So you can see I got Amazon, you've got UPS, you've got Alphabet, Google, you've got several that have gotten, I guess, initial approvals to start flying these drone fleets. And again, you saw where 2013 is when Amazon actually started testing this. That's now, what, 8 years ago, 9 years ago? So it's the R&D, I guess the research and design process has had a little bit of time to cook and refine. So what are the challenges? It's really just kind of that FAA approval, and you start seeing some of that clearance, federal approval becoming a reality. So in some ways I can see this air delivery, the air services having faster approval than transportation on the ground on the roads. There's less regulations with those aerial drones to contend with than there are all of the federal highway, state, and local regulations. So in some ways I could see this going even quicker than any of us might imagine. One interesting seminar I attended at a national conference talked about the air deliveries and the drones, and how they've tested it to the point to even know that in your rural areas there's more possibility of some of these getting shot out of the sky. So they've learned how to fly these out of effective shotgun range and deliver packages. So they basically take off straight up in the air and then come down directly to the point where they're to be delivered. So if autonomous vehicles become in the present, then maybe air taxis may be the future. Mentioned just a second ago about how cars on the roads may face greater regulation and how air travel may not have quite as much regulation. There, picture, of course, the comical, I guess, thing of the Jetsons. Talked about flying cars for a long time, but on the right you see 2 active air taxi vehicles that are in service in Dubai, and I think they've been tested in Europe and a few other places. And I'll just go to this next short video that just shows the company Lilium that is developing kind of a little more advanced system here.
We promised the world a 5-seater jet. Today, we are delivering on that promise. It takes off and lands vertically. It's fully electric. This is the Lilium jet.
This is the first time that we have a full-scale, full-weight prototype of that 5-seater version. This is the next step in mobility as we perceive it. What we're trying to achieve here is an air mobility revolution.
So again, that was in 2019. It's fixing to be 2022. So you know, two and a half years ago is when that test flight was. They've developed it since then, and the plan is to have these available by 2025. So we'll just have to again see where that goes and how that develops.
So we're here with Karissa Lemon, who's an employee of the Planning Commission and the MPO coordinator for the Bowling Green Warren County MPO. Thank you for being here, because you have to be since you're an employee. But we'll just ask you some questions relating to the comp plan update. What are some of the challenges the community has faced the past 10 years with transportation?
That's a great question. I know you guys have talked a lot about growth, and I think a lot of that growth that Warren County has experienced over the past 10 years has greatly influenced our transportation system. As most of you all know, our roads are more traversed and much more crowded than they were 10 years ago. So responding to all of the needs that we have is really a big challenge, in trying to find the balance of figuring out what our priority projects are, like a major overhaul of Scottsville Road or a new interchange versus minor intersection improvements or downtown circulation improvements. So I think one of the biggest challenges is just limited funding and balancing priorities and figuring out the trade-offs of which project is more important to respond to a lot of the growth that we've experienced versus planning for the future. And so sometimes it can be hard to be proactive rather than reactionary.
So describe a little bit of how that process works. How do you determine that Scottsville Road is a priority over, say, Nashville Road or Three Springs Road or any other road?
Sure. So a lot of that is data driven. Through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, we have a process through SHIFT, and that's a project prioritization system. The MPO here locally, we work well with all of our different jurisdictions, City of Bowling Green, Warren County, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, District 3, and any other local partners. And so we work with them to prioritize and rank projects. And we go through that system, and we determine, based on data that is determined at the statewide level, we go through and we vet those projects. And we use data, we use local input, and we ultimately try to do the trade-offs of, is it worth that large financial commitment, or do we need to do more low-hanging fruit type of projects?
One of the things we do also is studies. We do special studies. So can you name a few of those recently that we went through and how those kind of play in that thought process in selecting projects?
Sure. Over the last 5 years, we've done a number of studies through the MPO. Several of those, the Plano Road Corridor study, which also led into the Plano Focal Point Plan. And then we did the Fairview Avenue Safety and Capacity Study. We've done a US 31W bypass road diet feasibility study. We did recently completed the I-65 interchange feasibility study as well. And a lot of those we've actually seen projects come on the ground. For example, the US 31W bypass, the road diet feasibility study, spring of 2022, maybe summer of 2022, we are expecting to have a road diet on the bypass, and that's reducing 4 lanes down to 3. Fairview Avenue, this is a portion from Karissa Park cemetery areas through Hayes Lane, looking at just some road improvements through there, and that project has come through the shift cycle and that has been prioritized. We don't have funding for it, but we recognize that that section of roadway does need to be improved.
So on the planning side, so we take all of this information from these studies and other information on proposed developments when we have rezoning, and we look at this information. We consult with both the state transportation cabinet and the city and or county public works when these developments are presented and traffic improvements are proposed on a case-by-case basis, depending on the development too, and the developer will typically have to do some sort of improvements as well. So I just wanted to mention that is a part of the planning process, transportation planning process we take out here in our office too. So what are some future trends or issues that you think the community should be thinking about as we kind of move forward here?
It's a great question, and I know that we've discussed a lot about just the uncertainty of the future, and that is very true with transportation in particular. I think all of the trends that we've discussed, just with housing trends, shift from maybe home ownership to rentals to just how people are moving, and a lot of the work from home changes as a result of the pandemic, and so many other trends that I'm not going to get into that you probably already covered. I think a lot of those things will in turn influence how transportation functions. I know a lot of us use services like Amazon or other home delivery services, and a lot of grocery deliveries and things like that. So how is freight travel going to continue to increase, and how is it going to change what our roads look like? Are we going to be seeing more freight travel? Are we going to see, how are those goods going to be delivered? And so I think we'll have to be considering a lot of those things. Are we going to have semi-trucks coming to our front door? Are we going to have drones? And so just considering those things and not avoiding them because they seem so unrealistic, but leaning into them and considering those when we think about the future of our transportation system. And I think about communities. I know there are several communities using cargo bikes for local deliveries, and maybe that's something that would be implemented downtown, UPS cargo bike deliveries. So like I said, a lot of uncertainties and things that we don't quite know yet.
So you mentioned bicycles, which is great. So non-automobile travels, typically here it's pedestrian and bicycle. We've had a lot of momentum, great momentum really recently with our Bike Walk BG initiative. So talk a little bit about what you've seen and read on trends about people maybe getting out of their cars a little more here lately from the pandemic, and how that amenities even for living, whether it be downtown but also in suburbs now.
So there's a lot of momentum for increased use of biking and walking and other forms of non-motorized transportation, and that's something that we really want to focus on into the future. Like you said, we've had a lot of positive momentum here locally over the last few years to increase our bike lanes, our greenways, our sidewalks, and our local jurisdictions have been very proactive with trying to improve our community to be more bikeable and walkable. And that's something that we hope will continue, and we're going to continue to set our gaze on that into the future, because we see that it is a need for our community, both for transportation, but also for just a public amenity and quality of life opportunity for our community overall.
Well, I appreciate the comments and the participation. Of course, there'll be more to come when we get to our transportation element of the comp plan, a little more details. We'll get a little more in the weeds maybe about the discussion, but appreciate your time.
Of course.
So what do we think some of the other changes that are coming will look like? If you've ever been to Amazon Go or Target Go store, basically you go in, you don't take out with you the products you want to buy. It's basically a display models. You go in, you look at it, you can test it out, touch it, whatever you need to do to decide whether you want to purchase that item. If you do want that item, you would just open the app, scan that item, and then let's say you're on your lunch break, then you would just simply go back to work, and then all of the autonomous deliveries and/or workers will grab that item and they will ship it to your home. Typically it's about a 2-hour guarantee at the moment. May get down to 30 minutes, so ideally that would be at your house or delivered at the point in time you get to your house, so you can have those items. So again, you go to the store, you scan the items you want, and then they will probably beat you home. The retail to storage warehouse ratio is changing. So will commercial retail cores shift to warehouse and delivery hubs? Typically, you have 80% shopping space, floor space, and 20% storage at a big box store. Over time, that is expected to possibly flip as these technology evolve. So it'd be 80% warehouse space and only 20% floor space. All of it will change more to storage, distribution, delivery, pickup and drop off, which will change our traffic patterns and circulations. So what would we do with that vacant retail space? Will they become those delivery hubs? Will there be more semi trucks in our commercial areas and things of that nature? So it's all trends we need to monitor. We don't have the answers to those obviously yet, but we should be thinking about those and be ready. One more interesting thing, Walmart has filed a patent for a self-replenishing pantry. So what would that mean? As you are in your home and you're, say, cooking a pot of beans, you grab the last can of beans off your shelf, that pantry would know that you used that last can of beans, go ahead and automatically order you some new ones in the brand that you like, and then those would show up at your house, maybe by the headless Ford delivery robot. It could come in your house, put that back on in the space in the pantry that it goes, and then of course everybody go along their merry way. Again, customer acceptance of that, who knows? But that is the idea behind the self-replenishing pantry.
We're here with Alex Nottmeier, commercial real estate broker with Neal Turner Realty. And correct me if I got that wrong, but I believe I got it right. And I just want to thank you for being here, answering a few questions for us, kind of participating in our little video project here. First question I have for you is, how would you describe the demand for retail, commercial office space maybe 10 years ago? And then, of course, following that with what's it look like more today?
Well, I think 10 years ago, in 2011, we were just getting our feet back on the ground from the Great Recession. I think, we did not get overbuilt in the Great Recession. Yes, we had some troubles like everyone else did, but we did not have a lot of oversupply that was on the market, and we still saw retail and office projects 10 years ago coming out of the ground over really multifamily or industrial. You look back at Stadium Park Plaza, Gary Farms had a big power center where Dick's is located now, coming out of the ground. Heartland Condos, which was about 70,000 square foot of office. You know, you look at the market now, and it's really the two areas are multifamily and industrial is what we're seeing. And we're seeing some adaptive reuses of some retail big boxes. You know, we have the Mint Gaming going into the former H.H. Gregg that sat vacant for years. You've got churches backfilling spaces. So, you know, we're seeing the reuse of the retail space. But really, you know, the last project of retail that came out of the ground was probably the power center at Gary Farms. That was a number of years ago. And I don't think there's a lot of projects scheduled to come out relating to retail.
Yeah, so as kind of that mix had already started to change, of course, pre-COVID, and now that we've hit COVID and hopefully on the backside of COVID, though who knows these days, what do you, how did COVID, or I guess how did this past 2-3 years kind of change, or did it change?
No, it did, and I think, you know, from the office, where the verdict's still out of what direction office is going to go, whether the stay-at-home or the maybe a portion of the typical work week is at home and some's in the office. Some corporate office users are talking about downsizing, others are talking about adding more space to sort of spread out. Over the years, the amount of square footage per employee definitely decreased, and now we may see that increase. But like I said, the verdict's still out on office, and then, you know, again, retail has been changing for years with e-commerce, and you know, I think we really saw the pickup, curbside pickup, really grow the last year and a half with COVID, whether it was grocery related or really, you know, any retailer had that, and I think, you know, we're going to continue to see that as a service that's being offered. The, you know, traditional grocery store and a lot of this retail, they end up shrinking their square footage requirements, you know, with less customers coming in the store and more picking up in the parking lot.
So traffic, sir, one thing we've tried to pay attention to is traffic circulation patterns we think will change as that retail, I guess, floor space versus storage versus people picking up changes. And then also just parking. Used to, you would design a parking lot for Black Friday, which is coming up here as we record this. But even now, you know, you don't see those parking lots full like they used to be. And do you have any sense of how much that's really this change that we're talking about the past few years? I mean, I always say that if people don't go shop like they used to, you don't just go to a store to just browse anymore and may or may not buy something. A few still do, but it seems like more and more we have we just buy things online or whatever, and then either go pick them up or have it delivered to your house. So what's your thoughts on, I guess, parking lots and all of that? What should we be thinking about there?
Well, you know, and even before COVID, I know with the presence of Uber and rideshare nationally, that they were looking at shrinking the parking fields pretty substantially, that people just weren't having their own vehicles. And again, that may be in larger markets and not Bowling Green. I can't imagine giving my vehicle up and rely on rideshare programs. But, you know, the other thing is like I said, the curbside, and then really with the restaurants, the presence of drive-through and app ordering there, where you know, you're there for a minute to grab your coffee rather than, you know, 10 minutes to have to wait in line. So I do think that the fields will shrink a little bit, the parking fields and the requirements, and you know, it's going to be a quick stop to pick up curbside rather than, you know, having a vehicle sitting there for an hour while you browse.
Sure. And you mentioned restaurants, and of course I think the restaurant industry was one of the hardest hit through COVID, but it seems like we're having I don't want to say a resurgence, but certainly a crop of new ones maybe take some of their place, and then even some interest in some maybe new things, new change or whatever. Have you seen seen that? Yeah. Do you expect that to continue? Or?
Yeah, again, I think the drive-through and the app ordering and curbside pickup and outdoor dining, you which really took off. For some locations, temporary during COVID, but I think we've got more and more restaurants that want to require that outdoor dining experience. So I think that's something definitely to keep in mind with planning and zoning, and how to accommodate that from a noise level standpoint and safety standpoint as well.
Sure. And then last but not least, we were talking earlier about industrial, and of course we're doing very well here, as well as some of our surrounding communities in Nashville. Do you see much influence of, well, one, I guess our industrial successes here, I think, have generated some demand and helped keep us afloat through these hard times. But what about outside of Bowling Green, Warren County, say, specifically get a lot of questions asked about Nashville and Amazon and now Oracle's project down there in Nashville. Do you see much influence there yet?
Yeah, we do. I mean, really over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a tremendous push up into Kentucky for industrial, and a lot of it from Nashville. It's just from a price standpoint alone of asking rents in Nashville versus up here, it's a lot less, and then the congestion in the Nashville area also. The project we did with I-65 years ago in Kentucky, having a divided highway with 3 lanes in each direction, is just substantial. So I think the industrial growth is going to continue. We're seeing, really from 10 years ago, all of our spec projects right now are pretty much industrial or multifamily versus the office and the retail. And I think that's going to continue. We're getting ready to see probably a 500,000 square foot building, spec industrial, coming out of the ground in Bowling Green, by far the biggest building that we've ever seen from a spec development standpoint, and I think that'll continue. I think we'll see some adaptive reuses in industrial into existing buildings that maybe weren't industrial to begin with. So, and that's a factor with construction prices as well right now. So.
Sure. All right. Well, is there anything else that either the Planning Commission or the community in general needs to be thinking about as we kind of move forward through this process?
I think going back to office, 10 years ago, you still had the independent physician out there with his office scattered throughout Bowling Green. We've seen a tremendous increase of the hospital campus and the consolidations occurring. And again, the reuses, I think Spence Property Management took a medical building on Ashley and utilized that for their office outside of medical. So I think we'll continue to see that. And I think we'll also see that on the financial services with branch bank locations. We've seen a little bit of that here, but I think we'll continue to see branch banks close and get repurposed into other things besides the financial services.
Interesting. All right. Well, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So just to try to cover the whole gamut here, don't want to leave anybody out. So you think this won't affect you because you live out in the country, right? Well, not so fast. So autonomous farming is rapidly evolving as well. So family farms have declined over the years, though there still are quite a few left in Warren County. Larger more corporate leaning farms are coming along, so bigger money, bigger equipment, and then of course you got labor shortages that we learned about to contend with. So autonomous farming is real. Just a few pictures here. The John Deere top right, you'll see that is a driverless, completely autonomous tractor that is on its own. There's nobody driving that. It's all completely remote control. Gets its orders from, I guess, headquarters, wherever that is. And then, not to be left out, Case New Holland, bottom left, that's a Case tractor. Again, no cab. Bottom right is a John Deere sprayer. John Deere has a system where all of these components work together. They know what order to work in. They know who to follow, what vehicle to follow to get the job done. And again, these vehicles can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not take breaks. So one reason I want to bring this up is because in the field there typically aren't any regulations. So while driverless tractors and the like may not be able to currently drive on the road, they can drive in the fields. So they can go do their jobs, park on the side of the road. Maybe for now the human comes, picks those up, and takes the grain wagon or whatever back to the silo. So farming is changing as well, and changing rapidly. Expensive equipment, obviously, but if prices come down, this may become more viable. We already hear things, robot milkers and different items like this. There's some, you want to have fun and go down the rabbit hole, just Google autonomous farming and look at autonomous orchards and a lot of different robot dogs and robot flying machines that pick only the ripe fruit and leave the old fruit. These machines that can go through and identify the desired crop versus a weed and spray just that one little spot, uses less chemicals, more environmentally friendly, all kinds of crazy, interesting advances in autonomous farming that are, again, currently being tested. Again, not widely used yet, but is starting to come a little more mainstream. And just because we like to show videos, I'll go ahead and play this one for just a few minutes here. So that just gives you a quick idea of what's happening, what's coming in farming. For some local trends, we'll now talk to Joanna Coles and from our UK Ag Extension Office and kind of get some ideas and thoughts of what we need to think about locally.
So we're here with Joanna Coles, who is an extension agent with the Warren County Cooperative Extension Office, and thank you for taking some time to answer some of our questions and participate in our comprehensive plan update process. First question I have is, can you just describe the farming industry, really the past 10 years, so maybe 10 years ago versus kind of what we see today?
So our farming industry in Warren County is vibrant, and I think it's one of the things that makes Warren County so special. We have a great urban interface, but we also have a lot of rural areas, a lot of farming activity, and actually we lead the state in some of our agriculture endeavors. Cool. And so it's really neat. Our farmers, they do more with less. They are able to raise more on less acres, but I think people would be surprised. Over the last 10 years since we've had statistics analysis, we've lost some farms, but our farms have gotten more productive, and we've lost some acres, but we're doing more on that limited number of acres. But I think people would think, I think we're rapidly losing more farmland acres than we have in the last 10 years. But we're #1 in fruit production in the entire state of Kentucky, right here in Warren County, and we're in the top 10 of a lot as well. Dairy farms, even though we don't have as many of them, we have a lot larger farms producing a lot more milk. And beef cattle, horses, and swine. We're some of the leaders in those commodities. And so when we talk about economic impact as far as agriculture goes, millions and millions of dollars worth of sales. And when we keep that money here locally, it helps support our other economic growth in our community.
Awesome. Good deal. So what are some trends happening today that we need to be aware of, or maybe the community doesn't always think about in farming?
Well, when you think about production agriculture, even though we're the third largest in number of farms in the entire state, Warren County has the third largest number of farms. You know, agriculture is only 2%. Production agriculture is only 2% of the population. So there are fewer farmers feeding more people. And a lot of times we take for granted that some of our basic needs, the things that we have to stay alive, are food, water, and shelter. And agriculture provides a lot of that. But we're so fortunate to live in the United States. We're in South Central Kentucky because in Warren County we can raise about any product that you need, whether that be protein, fruits, or vegetables, and you don't even have to go very far to get it. During the pandemic, when grocery store shelves were running empty, it was so great that we had a lot of those products that you could source here locally. Go meet that farmer, go see how they're farming, and be able to get those local resources. And so when people say, why do we need farmers? I can go to the grocery store and get everything I need. I think the pandemic really showed us that this is why we need those farmers here locally, because if there's supply chain shortages, if there are truck driver shortages, we can still get that food that we desire and need right here in our own community.
Of course, one of the things we've seen kind of in the planning world is the popularity of farmers markets and being able to go to the source to get those goods and products. And I guess one statement I make, I'm just looking for agreement or validation for, is that seems to be a lot more popular now than it used to be.
It is. I think people are trending. It was always a trend to kind of buy local, go to the farmer's market, but we've seen a great uptick in that, about people wanting to source local and support those local farmers because of the importance of having access to food.
That's awesome. So as far as the future goes, how do you see farming changing in the next 10 years if you have your crystal ball, I guess? Yeah.
Well, another thing that's changed in the last 10 years is the amount of technology that we use. The precision in the fields are down to inches with auto-steer tractors, with all the GPS technology that we have. In one field, we can identify the yields all across that field. There's just so much more technology that goes into farming. There's also technology on the seed side where we can produce more with less, or if we have a drought situation. Some of those things that we can't control in agriculture is weather. One of those other things is markets. And so our technology's helped us develop how to maybe handle some of those situations. And so I think we'll see more of that. I think we'll see more advancement in technology to where we're more efficient with the use of our land. Farmers are the ultimate conservationists. They want to care for the land that they have been given. And so I think there'll be a lot more focus on being sustainable and having a real mindfulness about the environment.
You mentioned technology, and I went down that rabbit hole on YouTube, basically, what's autonomous farming vehicles and drones and all that stuff. Very, very interesting, and we show some of that in our presentation we're doing. But what else, I guess, should this community be paying attention to as far as the trends, whether it be positive or concerning for
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I think one of the great things that makes Warren County so great is we have the urban, all the great things that come along with that. But you can take a short drive and enjoy nature and our natural resources. And we want to preserve that because I do think that's what makes it special. And so the thing about it is when we think about the earth, and 2/3 of that is water, so that's taken off the table. And then we have all the other that we already have public, like this building, public buildings on and those type of things. It only leaves a sliver of land that's available for agricultural production. And so I think we just need to be mindful of, we want to grow, we want to be progressive, but we also want to be able to have farms and we want to be able to have food here locally because it is such a driver in the community economically, as well as just a lifestyle and a way of life to have that nearby. But I do think it presents some challenges, and I just think that we need to talk about that and have that conversation. And farmers being 2% of the population, being on their farms, a lot of times they're not always accessible, but they're always willing to talk about agriculture. agriculture and their farm, because it's more than a farm to them.
Absolutely.
It's their family, it's their passion, it's their legacy that they're leaving, and so they love to talk about it, and it's a big deal. But I think that they understand that that's what makes Warren County great. But it's about having those conversations and coming up with a plan where we can preserve both.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.